that I found that everybody didn't love preachers. I thought everybody loved preachers. My mother told me if the preacher says it, it's so. And so I thought everybody loved preachers. And I one time had a burden, and I found out that preachers weren't loved. And I went out in the backyard under a pine thicket, and I cried, and I cried, and I said, "Dear God, I didn't know it was going to be like this. I thought everybody loved preachers. And Lord, I don't know what to do. I said, I preach what I believe, and I believe what I preach, and I've got to be honest and faithful." And I cried and cried, outside the gate. But guess who I saw there? Guess who I saw? He was there. I found Jesus there again and again and again. I found him in times of suffering. You know where he is this morning in Hammond, Indiana? He's in that hospital room out in Dyer, where one of our young boys, 14 years of age, either has Hodgkin's disease or leukemia, they think. Sat over here with our kids, and they think he has Hodgkin's disease or leukemia. Jesus is beside his bed this morning. You know where you'll find him? You'll find him at a rest home where some poor, dear people need somebody to help. You want to find Jesus? Look up a tree. He may be up there with the Zacchaeus. You want to find Jesus? You look beside the road. He may be there with the blind Bartimaeus. You want to find Jesus? Look over here at the well side. He may be there with the poor fallen woman. You want to find Jesus? Look at the grave side. He may be there about to raise somebody from the dead. He in Hammond this morning, he's beside the hospital bed, at the graveside, beside the shut-in, beside the bus kid. You want to find Jesus? You find Mr. Charles Foreman, one of our members who's blind this morning. You will find Jesus is there. I'm sure if I'd have said, "Hey, fellas, where can I find Jesus?" He said, "Find all the poor, look over where the poor folks are. Or look, go down where the sick folks are. Or go down where folks are about to get buried. And you may find him there." That's where he is, outside the gate. I found Jesus there again and again and again. Where do you find him? The lonely spot. Where do you find him? Outside the gate. Where do you find him? With the down and outers. Where do you find him? With the little poor kids. I found him. Oh, listen. That's one reason why, Brother Fisk, when sorrows and heartaches come, we shrink back from them. We don't want to be alone. We don't want to have suffering of body. We don't want to say goodbye to our babies. We don't want to say goodbye to our children. We don't want to hear the word cancer. We don't want to hear the word lonely. We don't want to hear the word depression. By the way, I'm not really worried about the meat shortage. Especially the pork shortage. I hope every pig in this country does what those pigs had enough sense to do in Gadara. Go down and jump in the river. But I'm not worried about the meat shortage. You know what this country needs? The Christian people, you and I, we need once again to know what it is to get hungry and have to fall on our face and say, "Give us this day our daily bread," and have an angel come from heaven with a sandwich to give us from heaven. We need to be hungry for a while. We need to have adversity for a while. We need to have our face against the wall for a while. That's where Jesus is. If you want to find him, you'll find him in a lonely place or outside the gate. I found him when my dad left home when I was a kid, on my knees begging Dad to stay and quit his liquor and stay at home. He turned his back on me and walked down the street, and I went to my little room, and I thought I'd die, but I found Jesus there. I found Jesus there. I found him one day out in the Dyer Mercy Hospital when Linda was 4 years of age and had her tonsils out, and everything seemed okay. And the nurse came back and found her in a pool of blood. And the nurse picked that little 4-year-old body up in her arms and began screaming, "Doctor, doctor, doctor," running down the hallway. And I went to a dark room, and I found Jesus there. As I look forward to my life, Brother Fisk, I'd rather not have to face those days again. I'd rather not have to come back home from a meeting of Southern Baptist group and face what I thought was the last sermon I'd ever preached. I'd rather not have to face the time when my dad left home again. I'd rather not have to face all the heartaches. I'd rather not have to go through what I went through 13 years ago in this church. 13 years ago today, we were going through hell in this church, and my life was threatened almost every Saturday night. Before I'd walk in the pulpit, somebody would say, "We'll shoot you if you walk in the pulpit tomorrow." I mean, a call at 2 o'clock in the morning. And they'd say, you'll be dead if you walk in the pulpit tomorrow morning. I'm not talking about folks that left the church. I'm talking about people that I'm sure want to play pranks. But I don't want to go through that again. I thank God for the deacons. God bless these men who stand beside me and are loyal to me. Bless God for them. And I don't want to have to go through a time when the deacons don't stand beside the preacher. I don't want to have to go through a time of suffering and sorrow. But oh, let me tell you, looking forward to it, I don't want it. But looking backward to it, I say, hallelujah, I had it. I know what it is to face the wall. I know what it is to go outside the gate. I know what it is to walk alone. That's where you find Jesus. Oh, that's where you find Him. You'll find Him in a cemetery as you turn to walk away. And there beneath the sod is that little baby. By the way, last night, our deacons voted to build a church cemetery. We're going to call it Rapture Gardens. And only our people will be buried there. And it's the only cemetery in the whole world where everybody will be gone at the rapture. And we're going to will the cemetery to the National Council of Churches after the rapture. We're going to build in that cemetery an exact replica of the empty tomb in outside Jerusalem. I'll tell you more about it later. But we voted last night to do it. But you know where you'll find Him? You'll find Him at a cemetery as a young couple turns and walks away, as many of ours have done. And they go back to find an empty crib and a bronze shoe up on the mantle. And they weep and they fall arm in arm, as they've done so many times in this church. You'll find Jesus there. You know where you'll find Jesus? With that little couple that came by my office yesterday afternoon and said, our boy has a terrible disease. Our teenage boy. Brother Hyles, what shall we do? As they walked away, my heart broke. You'll find Jesus there. That's where you'll find Him. That's where you'll find Him. Where can I find Jesus? Oh, that I knew where to find Him, said Job. Job, you're in the ash heap right now. If you'll just look over, that's where He is. You're outside the gate right now. He's there. It isn't if you knew where to find Him. If you have enough sense to know He's there with you right now, Job. He's outside the gate. But there's something else. Oh, that I knew where I might find Him. There are three places you'll find Him. Hey, fella, let me ask you a question. Where's Jesus? I've heard about Him. I've come for miles to see Him. I want to see this fella, Jesus. Where is He there, you Jew? Where is He? Well, you may find Him on the Mount of Olives. If He's not there, you'll find Him with some poor people outside the gate. Well, we tried the Mount of Olives. He wasn't there. And we tried all the poor areas in town outside the gate. He wasn't there. Where can we find Jesus? Well, if He's not there, I'll tell you where you'll find Him. You will find Him with a gathering of God's people. That's where you'll find Him. Maybe out at the home of Mary and Martha on the other side of the Mount of Olives. Maybe on a hillside with Peter, James, and John. Maybe with His disciples in a boat. But you'll find Him in a gathering of God's people. And by the way, this morning you can find Him alone if you'll go alone. You may find Him in heartbreak outside the gate suffering. But I'll tell you one place you can always find Him. You can find Him where God's people gather. One little boy came down the aisle. I'll never will forget it. One Sunday morning. Had his hand in his pocket. Had on a leather jacket. Had his hand in his pocket like this. His pants just about to fall off. By the way, I'm worried about the girls now. I used to worry about the boys' pants falling off. They call them hip huggers. I just hope they keep hugging. I'm worried about a lot of them. And he came down. He had blue jeans on, and a little kid about 12, 13 looked up at me and said, "Hey, fella!" Said that to me. Fella. I said, "What is it, son?" He said, "Hey, fella!" Said, "Where's the getting saved place?" I said, "Thank God you found it." This is the getting saved place. Or you can get saved somewhere else. You can get saved up a tree or beside a well. But I'll tell you one place you'll find Jesus in this town. You'll find Him here at this altar. Little girl over in South Chicago, Catholic girl. Her mother said, this could be said about Baptists too. Her mother said, "Sweetheart, you're old enough to go to church now." Mother didn't go to church. "But you're old enough to go to church now. Why don't you go down the street to the church?" Little girl went down to the Catholic church. She's probably here this morning. She came back home. Mother said, "Did you go to God's house?" She said, "Yes, ma'am, but He wasn't there." Next Sunday, she went back again. Little girl came back home from a Catholic church, and her mother said, "Did you go to God's house this morning?" She said, "Yes, ma'am, but God wasn't home again." little girl got on one of our buses one day. She came and sat in this building, and she received Jesus.